Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second week of Bidisha's Right Around the Block residency. We've got some fantastic workshops and block socials and discussions lined up for you this week, so I'll just give you a little teaser of what they are. Tomorrow, we've got the first workshop, identifying your skills and passions. So I think it's going to be a really interesting session that might help us all just find a better path to those jobs and that work that we're looking to do. The second block social will take place on Wednesday at 6 o'clock, and that's all about writing and activism, which is obviously something very, very close to WOW's heart. So please do join us for that. And then on the 1st of April, we have the Enterprise Hub. So Bidisha will be talking about a toolkit for breaking barriers to get into journalism. Journalism can often seem like a bit of a chaotic, mysterious world. So we're really looking forward to hearing what Bidisha has to say about breaking into the industry in that sense. We hope that this session gives you something to write about, get some sort of words down on paper. It's all just first draft stuff, so don't stress too much about it. And do look forward to the sessions that are taking place with Bidisha next week. But for now, I will hand over to Bidisha for this morning's Right Here, Right Now challenge.
Took me a while to get unmuted there. Not usually a problem in life, sometimes a problem when you're doing everything on Zoom. Hello everyone, and welcome to this is now week 2 of my Writer on the Block residency, and this is the section that we're calling Right Here, Right Now, which is half an hour of writing prompts and small writing tips that you can do. It's a bit like the morning pages, if you've heard about those, where you wake up in the morning, you open your diary or you get your paper together and you sort of get the writing muscles flexed and moving as you begin your week or you begin your journey as a writer or a journalist. In this case, we are focusing in my residency on nonfiction and specifically on journalism, particularly journalism with intentionality. And what I mean by that is journalism that is campaigning, journalism that's interested in social issues and social justice, and journalism that wants to be read immediately. So the kinds of writing that you routinely click onto when you wake up in the morning and you open up your paper of choice, whatever that might be. Now, in the previous slot that I did for Right Here, Right Now, we looked at 2 different kinds of journalism, investigation and news. So investigation would be those long reads where they're 3,000 to 500 word essays, and news would be the headlines, the informative, short, punchy, very factual kinds of writing. And in the 20 odd minutes that we have, according to my hastily changed clock on this weirdly humid late March morning, the fleece is here, the cardigan's here, don't need any of that. You just need a pen and some paper and some ideas. We're going to look at a different kind of journalism, 2 different kinds. One is reviews and one's columns. So I'll spend the first half of the time looking at reviews and the second half looking at columns. The thing I want to stress in both reviews and columns as a writer is, what's your voice? Every journalist, every writer is different. Even if you have a paper with 50 writers working for it, every single one of those has a different voice. So my tip to you is, don't try to put on a persona. Don't be a fake version of yourself. Be what I call the polished upscale version of who you really are as a writer. How do you work out what your authorial voice is as a writer? I would suggest, instead of sitting down and trying to confect, try to make up an approach, go back over your existing diaries and notebooks and try to be objective and work out what the tone is. So are you humorous? Are you very factual? Are you cold? Are you analytical? Are you someone who pulls in lots of other references? Are you someone who makes lots of references to their own life? What's the general tone of your work? Is it cozy? Is it confrontational? Is it campaigning? Is it something else? If you're not 100% sure about your voice as a journalist, I'm a big favor of having readers. I don't think everyone has to join a reading group where you're with 11 strangers and they're all critiquing your work. But if you have a friend who's objective and is trustworthy, in the sense that in the sense that they won't just compliment you. Give them some examples of your existing written work, even if that's just a diary entry or a journal or a letter that you've written. And try to analyze yourself and your approach as a writer from the outside in. That's the first thing I'd say about voice. A general rule is whether you're writing reviews or columns, don't use the first person singular too much. I, me, my. Yes, you can drop in references to your own life, and that's very prevalent within columns these days because they're very individualized, but the minutiae of your daily life should definitely never be creeping into columns at all. You can obviously make it clear that you are writing as an individual writer, but if you're reviewing, let's choose something very simple. If you're reviewing a film, nobody is reading for details about you or your life or where you're coming from. That should all be implicit in the writing. So let's look at reviews now, and we'll go on to columns in about 10 minutes. A review is usually, at the shortest, it's about 500 words. I've done ones which are 350, but those are just really, they're this big on the page. And I've done art and architecture reviews, which are 1,100 words. So it's really an essay chunk. If you imagine 1,100 words on a Word document, it's sort of a page and a half of single spacing. You are focused on one or two particular projects, and you are assuming that whatever you're reviewing, whatever it might be, whether it's sport, something cultural, something political, a trip, a travel piece, you are assuming that you are writing for an informed lay reader. What do I mean by that? The reader does not have specific knowledge of the individual thing that you're reviewing, but they have a kind of accomplished, generalized background. So to pick an obvious example, if you are reviewing a classical music concert, you don't have to baby step it out and describe what all of those words mean. You come right in at the level of the composer or the musicians. But equally, there's a difference between being a journalist and being an academic scholar. So you have to write for a generalized mainstream audience who are intelligent and who have a lot of background information, but not necessarily the specific information. In a review, you have to provide a little bit of context. What do I mean by that? This is this composer's third symphony. After the first one did great and the second one was derided for these reasons, and there was a little bit of controversy regarding this, that, or the other. We are now reassembling at this venue. And so you can understand why the composer would be tense. You're providing a little bit of factual detail just to situate the reader within the world that you're talking about. And it's also a way of showing that you're providing the right amount of attention and seriousness to each work of art. At the end of the day, every single day, thousands of artists, thousands if not millions, are bringing out art, films, book, new projects, new campaigns, new social justice initiatives. And not every single thing is going to be covered. So in your review, you are narrowing down your focus and you are saying, right, I'm just going to focus on this for now. And I'm going to do that with all due seriousness without worrying too much about all the thousands of other things you could be reviewing at that time. And so within the first quarter or the first third, you're setting the scene, you're laying the groundwork for what this is. Given that you've been commissioned to do a review, you don't need to do what needs to happen in other forms of journalism, which is have a peg or justify why you're writing about something. You can go straight into it. And within that, remember that you're not writing a news article. So you are still keeping in the wonderful flow of voice that you would expect in a slightly more relaxed form of journalism without putting the focus onto yourself. The entirety of your focus has to be on the work that you are reviewing. Another way to develop your voice as a writer is if you feel uncomfortable or self-conscious about doing what I do, which is getting all, I'll show you, these are my film notes. These are notes for the next film I'm working on. If you feel self-conscious about doing that and unpracticed, have a chat about what you're reviewing, either with a friend or to yourself, and record it. So you produce audio and that gets your thoughts together, or brain dump your findings and just spooge them onto the page without too much order, a bit like you would do if you were pre-planning a school essay, and just keep them at the bottom of the page and filter in the topics in a logical fashion, really school pupil style when you're doing your later draft. Remember that the editor only sees your last draft. So anything you put on the page beforehand, it's just for your eyes. So if the first 3 drafts are rubbish, it truly doesn't matter because nobody on the planet is seeing it. In the second half of your review, that's when your opinion comes in. And of course, a review is one reviewer's opinion of what they're seeing. Everyone knows that that opinion will be from your point of view. It'll be based on your preferences. Not everyone likes everything. That's why people tend to read multiple reviews of each thing they're going to see. And it's also why people like to read reviews for fun. We read restaurant reviews, not because we're going to go to that specific restaurant, but because we like the food critic. We like Grace Dent, or we used to like A.A. Gill, the late A.A. Gill, because of their wit and their voice. Nonetheless, there are some rules within reviewing that I really want you to bear in mind. Hitting people over the head with your opinion, or having a feeling about something which is disproportionate to what you are reviewing. So extreme anger, you didn't like something and it made you angry, or extreme liking, you liked something and now you're raving about it and you write, well, everyone should just go and see this, or nobody should go and see this. That doesn't work at all. It's extremely off-putting, because what readers are going to say is, but why should I go and see it? Why should I not go and see, let's say, this play? So really your review is about why you feel the way you feel. Is it the performances? Is it that the time's not right? Is it that the themes aren't quite connecting to each other? So your question for yourself is, what do I think about this? And then the question that you put, the answers that you put down on the page are, why do I think this about this? You have to justify this ultimate opinion that you're giving, and give examples. So you don't say, well, I hated the costumes, I hated the music. That's not journalism. That's you talking with your friends away from the page. So you say the characters are undeveloped. The narrative loses its focus halfway through. All of these issues are brought to light in the beginning, but they're not addressed by the end. There's a structural point where the first half is extremely strong, and the second half, the energy dissipates somewhat. Always stay respectful. I realized this very early on. I made my name working for music and style mags in the 90s, and my early reviews were incredibly savage towards the artists in ways that were very unjustified. They made for a very funny read because you can put lots of jokes in there and all the rest of it. But I realized that it didn't help anyone to use a reviewing slot as an excuse to make a joke or have a really strong pun or a strong punchline in there, that people are really reading it for a form of individualized opinion, individualized pointers as to what they can discover. So you are, as a reviewer, you are leading the way through a huge amount of content, and you're pointing people at things that might be interesting in that great forest of content. In the last paragraph of the review, it doesn't have to be like a school essay where you somehow reprise and reiterate all of your previous points. Reviews are meant to be read quickly, so they're clear and they don't repeat. You don't need to repeat points. But you need to come to an end. So you say, as I did recently in a poetry review, despite all of this artist's promise, this particular work doesn't quite hit home, but there's enough there to justify sustained interest in the next thing that they do. But don't say it as formally as this, because that could be anyone's conclusion about any artwork. You have to provide a roadmap forward. If it's really, terrible, then you just end on a note of disappointment. But it's very rare that what you're reviewing is so bad that it will put you off the individual creator or the individual art form. So you have to provide a route into what you're reviewing. Let your voice relax and really be yourself within these rules of keeping it sort of neutral and keeping it still quite formal, relaxed formal, smart casual. That's a good phrase for now. And by the end, you have to lead people out of the review. I feel ambivalent towards people who fill up their reviews with lots of comparisons, because it tends to betray their own cultural blind spots. You know, you have a film reviewer who is reviewing one thing and then mentions pretty obvious comparisons, but you can say, okay, this work reminded me of these other things. This work seems to be part of a new school of thought, which is about bringing social realities into theatre, addressing certain topics. It's part of a new wave of young film or of emergent filmmakers who are looking with this kind of angle. This is part of this genre. You can say that in a way that doesn't have to be definitive. You can always remind people that one thing reminds you of a few other things, and it gives the people who are reading a nice roadmap into other things they might enjoy if they liked whatever it is that you're writing about. So I'm a kind of semi-fan of you widening out the context a little bit, but without ever showing off. The reviewer should never be bigger than the thing that they're reviewing, ever. I'm not a fan of celebrity reviewers for arts and cultural projects at all. I think your job is to engage with whatever it is that you're reviewing with humility and respect, and by meeting the artist where they are, instead of saying, well, I didn't like this because that's not what I thought it was going to be, or I didn't like Mozart because he's not like Beethoven and I really like Beethoven. You have to compare like for like and be on the level with what you're reviewing. Let me move on, because as ever, the time just flowed. I mean, we're like, how did we get to this point where I only have 7 minutes left? And talk about reviews, and now talk about columns. Columns or reviews are completely different things from each other. Columns are what you will find in the opinion section of a newspaper. So that is, you log on, it says opinion or views or voices. The Independent calls them voices. The FT calls them columnists. So does the Telegraph. Log on to the page, and what you'll see is a byline, which is your name, and often a picture of the writer. Very personalized. And you'll see kind of whole rankings of these people. And one of them will say, you know, this government, the beginning of the end. And another one will say the exact opposite. So another person will say, you know, PMQs, cause for hope. And that's what you can get on an opinion page. 2 different people with 2 completely opposite opinions in the same newspaper. And that's all to the good. A column is you and your opinion, your individualized take on an issue. There are certain rules around this, and I want to say what not to do right up front. It should never be trivial. You can tell when a columnist has gone off the boil because they write about what they saw when they were taking the dog for a walk on a Saturday morning, and that means that you've truly run out of opinions. Everyone has about 100 opinions. When you've done your 100 opinions, there's nothing much left to say, and you should just move on and give this lot to someone else. So it should not be petty. It shouldn't be trivial. Even if you have a gardening column, which is literally about you and your garden, there still has to be content there, substance. Even though you're writing about yourself and your opinion, there still shouldn't be too much of the first person singular. I, me, myself, this is a conversation I had with my kids. This is what I did in the morning in the kitchen. Just don't put any of that in. You are there as yourself, but to illustrate a particular viewpoint. The issue which often bedevils columnists who are writing every week, and they're writing a column which is around 770 words, this one column that goes down like that in a paper, newspaper, is to pick something that's relevant. So even if that feels very tired and overdone to you, or it feels as if every week there's the topic of the week, you have to lean into that. So a column is a personal, opinionated reaction to something which is in the news right here, right now. So whatever is on the news headlines of the outlet that you work for is what your opinion column is going to be. And it's your personal take on that, not based just on the feeling in your heart or based on what you want to rant about on any given day. It's based on your experience, your expertise, and your intellect. So it's an informed opinion. It's possible to give your opinion just in one sentence. I am in favor of assisted dying. I'm not in favor of littering. I think littering is bad. Your task in the column is to really explore your voice, to give examples, and to justify your reasoning with real-world examples. That's how you fill up the time in a column. And there's a real art to writing a column. The best way to practice writing columns is to do lots of dummy versions. I've had innumerable weekly columns in newspapers, and they are extremely good fun. You're expected to produce your column across not 2 days, but 2 moments. So one is where you pitch to the editor your ideas. Every single week, you'll get an email early on, let's say 9 o'clock in the morning, saying, oh, what are you thinking about this week? Never give just one idea. You are a columnist and you're expected to be on top of the news for the whole week. So you say, I'm thinking about Alex Salmond's new Alba party. I'm thinking about the vaccination rollout scheme. I'm thinking about these testimonies of sexual violence and harassment in schools. Those are issues, and everyone's thinking about those. And then the second line of your pitch email will be, I want to say something about X, Y, and Z. What is my take? What's my reaction to these 3 very different topics? They have to be things that you genuinely feel strongly about, because readers can tell in an opinion column when you are not passionate about it. So the third line of your pitch in each little point is, why did I want to write about this? So what am I going to say? Why do I want to write about it? A great tip is always stay on top of the news, read the news headlines the day or 2 before the pitch day comes, and look at what immediately makes you want to react. And just write those down in, this is what I have. I always do it on paper, but these are the specific topics, and these are kind of the your opinion or your take on them. And then write them down. You will get a kind of tick from your editor about which one it is. And then you have to produce the column quite quickly. So generally speaking, by 2 p.m. or 4 p.m., ideally 2 p.m., because if there are any changes or clarifications that need to be made, the editor comes back to you. You have to quickly write out your column and present it as a completed body of work. So if it's 750 words, it has to be 750 words in total. Editors who are looking after, let's say, 30 columnists in one day don't have time to cut down your homework for you. If you are a beginner journalist, practice, practice, practice. The times that I've had weekly columns in major publications, including The Independent and The Guardian, I, even decades into my career, still did a trial run where I handed in three different topic columns to make it obvious that I could do it to the word limit and that I could do it to time. So the weekend before, pick 3 things that you feel really strongly about, relax completely so that you don't tighten up your voice, and produce trial runs to time. That doesn't mean you rush, but it does mean that when you're writing, you do it with full concentration and you really know what you want to say. Don't blather in a column. and hand them in. The editor will then come back to you with your own text back in an email and a few questions in capitals saying, what do you mean by this? Can you give an example? Should this paragraph be down at the bottom? It feels like you're lacking a conclusion. The last line could be stronger. Don't get on your high horse about these clarifications. Good editors, which most who work at broadsheet newspapers or at the big magazines like Prospect and The Economist, they're really good at this, and they are coming to your work with a reader's eye. So they know what outside readers are going to be looking at. So if they're saying that you're making a point that's not very clear, they're telling the truth. And you'll have about 20 minutes maximum to clarify your points. And again, don't tighten up and don't get reactive. Really just answer their question in the simplest way, and realize that when an editor makes a clarification request, they are not asking you to redo the whole column. They are literally asking for one sentence, exactly where they put in their query, that you simply answer their question in one line and you help it flow. So I wouldn't get hung up on tiny little things that have come and gone in the editing process, or some joke you wanted to make that didn't come through, or some particular very subtle nuance. Don't worry about any of those things. A final point to make, which is that at the moment, it seems to be very popular to write a kind of confessional journalism, to really kind of bring out your whole trauma onto the page. I'm not against that. If it's one piece of work out of 20. But equally, I don't think you should ever sell yourself out or air all of your linen in absolute public. Remember that everything you write, particularly because it's online these days, is going to be read by absolutely everyone. So ask yourself if you're happy for personal material to be out there and accessible by every single person on the planet, regardless of what their viewpoint might be. I'm not telling you to self-censor. What I am saying is that your individual story can't be the whole story. It's you plus the context, it's you plus background, it's you plus all the other stuff that's happening in the world at one time. So really, I'm going to close this by, we're at 10:30. I'm going to close this by saying that both in terms of reviews and in terms of columns, but particularly columns, range is the key. And it's very important to foster an entire spectrum of things that you're interested in and things that you're really qualified and knowledgeable to write about. By qualified, I just mean that you know what you're talking about. That's why my closing piece of advice, how did we get to 10:30? I have absolutely no idea. My closing piece of advice is, yes, absolutely, do a mind map where you write about the things that you're interested in and that you want to talk about, and certain very specific opinion columns you want to focus on. You might find that although you feel as if you have lots and lots of ideas, you actually have about 6 in total. And if you hit a block or you run out of the things that are passion projects for you, don't think, well, that's the end of it. I can't write. I can't be a writer. Stay on top of the news, read all of the newspaper headlines, and write down whatever it is that you react to, something you feel strongly about. It might be outside your usual wheelhouse, but it's a good thing for you to be generally well informed and generally accomplished, so that you can, in fact, opine about a wider range of issues than you necessarily think that you are okay to talk about. You will find that there are odd little pockets of interest and odd little pockets of knowledge where you really are qualified to speak. And that's what editors are looking for. They're looking for writers who have staying power, and writers who, if you can project this into the future, who can truly produce a weekly column that's 750 words every single Wednesday or Saturday that isn't repetitive across a year. So expand your field of knowledge and remember 2 things. Why do I want to write about this? And what do I have to say? I'm going to end there because those are 2 pretty good principles to go by as a journalist. So why is it that I'm involved in this debate? Why am I inserting myself into this frame? And if I am going to insert myself into this issue or this topic, what am I going to add that is not repetitive and that is constructive to the debate, while still being respectful, nuanced, and well-researched? It is 10:33. How did that happen? I'm going to end there. You're going to find this on YouTube probably, which is snipped out. So you might be watching this at midnight in the middle of the planet somewhere. So for me, at least, it's a Monday morning. And so whatever day we're at, I wish you a very, very good week of writing and thinking and honing your voice and your craft as a writer. So good luck, and I'll see you very soon for the other events I have as part of the Right Here, Right Now and the Writer on the Block residency for Writing on the Wall.
Thank you so much, Bidisha. What a great way to kick off our week. Do check out all the rest of Bidisha's events over at writingonthewall.org.uk, and we will see you on the block very shortly. Take care. Bye-bye.